Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to those who are with us this evening, and hello to everyone who's watching the recording. This is the second of these Ask NatureSpot sessions that we've done. We've got some people joining us from outside Leicestershire and Rutland this evening, so welcome to them. I should just say that NatureSpot is a registered charity which records the wildlife of Leicestershire and Rutland. So if you're from the Shetland Isles or the Scilly Isles, you've got species that we're not familiar with and we may struggle with to identify, but obviously a lot of common species will be common throughout the UK and we should be able to help you with those. So what I will start sharing my screen. Hopefully everyone can see my screen now. Can you give me a wave if you can see that? Excellent, thank you. So we start with a request. We collect biological records. If you're within Leicestershire and Rutland, we would ask you to submit them to the NatureSpot website. If you do that, they go into the national recording schemes, but they also go into our local county records, which of course is important from an environmental point of view. If you're elsewhere in the UK, we suggest you submit your records to the iRecord website, which is at this address, because we only deal with records from Leicestershire and Rutland. And I should just say, we've just had a landmark today. In the 11 years that NatureSpot has been running, we've just recorded our 7,000th species. We're somewhere in the region of 300,000 records that we've collected and verified and published over the last 11 years. Consisting now of 7,000 different species just in Leicestershire and Rutland. So enormous thanks to everyone who's contributed species over that time, and also to all the people who've put in an awful lot of time verifying records for all the different taxa. So thank you very much. So I'm just going to start off with a couple of things that I've found recently, and then introduce some other records that we found. So when I take my my bug vacuum out on trips with me and I vacuum spiders up, I also find a lot of other things as well. And the Royal Entomological Society Code of Ethics says that if you catch something in a pitfall, trap, or however you catch it, you're obligated to try and do something with it, to either try and identify it or to pass it over to someone who can identify it. One of the things that I find when I'm vacuuming vegetation for spiders is lots of bugs. When I say bugs, these are true bugs, meaning not bug in the colloquial or American sense, but bugs meaning insects with biting or sucking mouth parts. And here are three species which come up quite frequently. These two on the left and the center occur in just about every sample I take. Just about everywhere I go in Leicestershire all year round, I seem to find at least one of these two, if not both of them. They're elongate myrid bugs. They're quite difficult to tell apart until you know the secret code. And the secret code is this one, Stenodema levigata, has this, it's not terribly clear on this picture, this little notch on the hind femora. So the first long joint of the hind leg, there's this little notch there, whereas Culcerata has these two big spurs on the hind femora rather than a notch. And a couple of weeks ago, I was at Austin, or Euston, not quite sure how you say it, and I was beating the foliage of an oak tree because that's quite a good way to find spiders at this time of year. And I found this thing, and this thing confused me a lot, and I wasn't sure what it was. It's a slightly different shape. It's got a more rounded body shape than these two, but it does look very, very similar to them. And also, when I looked at the hind femora under the microscope, it didn't appear to have a notch in it like this one, and it certainly didn't have any spurs on it. So quite a lot of head scratching went on for a while until I asked around, and it turns out to be Stenodema holstata, or holsata, I should say. And this is actually the first county record for this bug. This is a new species to VC55, or at least it's never been recorded in VC55. And the oak tree that I was bothering certainly had a lot of them on there. So I suspect that it's out there and not as uncommon as we think it is. But it's probably one of these which is expanding its range northwestwards very rapidly. We've seen a lot of examples of that over the past couple of years. This is a trip from a couple of weeks ago. This is David Nichols, who you'll see very shortly, and I, with a landowner, we went to do a survey for UTA, for the Wildlife Trust. And we, as you can see, we're practicing some socially distanced entomology here. So we went through some very nice meadows that the landowner is trying to improve. And we sampled all the insects. I'm highly attracted to oak trees at this time of year, as many insects are. So I should say this is just a range of the spiders. I think I found 23 species of spider in these meadows. I won't name them all because that would be thoroughly tedious. But one of the things I found from the oak trees around the boundaries of the field were this weevil. So this giant looking thing is not as big as it appears here. It's about 2 or 3 millimeters long, well, actually slightly bigger than that, 3 to 4 millimeters, I think, long. And this I couldn't identify because weevils are quite difficult to identify. Eventually passed it off to our county recorder, Graham Finch, who took this wonderful photo, and he identified it as this species, Magdalis cerasi. And this likes oak trees. And we only had 8 previous records from Leicestershire and Rutland. So that was a very nice find. Again, something that you may well find on oak trees if you tap the lower branches of oak trees over a white tray at this time of year. And an excellent photo from Graham. He takes wonderful photographs. These are some recent observations from Leicestershire. Mark Skevington, one of our local recorders, had a very productive trip to Ketton Quarry, one of our key nature areas in Leicestershire, or Rutland, I suppose, technically, VC55, a couple of weeks ago, came up with some interesting bugs. This one, Closterotomus trivialis, there are only 2 previous records of this one from VC55. Graham, I think you are the person who recorded both of these previously. Both of the previous records were from your garden in Sapcote. This one turned up in Ketton Quarry. And so, again, it may be increasing in frequency, but this one was quite recent. So quite a nice, attractive, relatively distinctive bug, should be relatively easy to recognize. One to keep your eyes open for. So this is about 5 or 6 millimeters long, something like this. And this one is even more interesting, Orthocephalus coriaceus. This is another new species for VC55. We don't have any previous records from the county from this one, so another one from Ketton Quarry. And so this is about the 4th or 5th new species of bug that we've recorded in the last 2 or 3 years. And I think it's very telling, very symptomatic that these species are spreading, extending their range northwestwards, and we're just finding more and more of these things. When you look at the distribution maps, classically they're in the southwest, or so the southeast of Britain, and gradually, or actually gradually, quite rapidly, they are spreading northwestwards. And the other thing that Mark found at Ketton is this. It's a 6-spot burnet moth, which is not a particularly rare moth in the right environment. In fact, I was at Cribbs Meadow last weekend, not the one just gone, the previous one, and I don't think I've ever seen as many 6-spot burnet moths as there were at Cribbs Meadow then. But I've never seen one of these. Normally a 6-spot burnet moth has red spots on a black background. This is an unusual form of this moth. This is form flava. This is the form with yellow spots, and I've never seen one of these. But they do crop up occasionally, but they're quite rare. So well worth keeping your eyes open amongst all of the thousands and thousands of 6-spot burnets out there at the moment. Worth looking out for one of these. It's a bit like Willy Wonka's golden ticket. You don't win a tour of the chocolate factory, I'm afraid, but we would like your records if you find one of these. I don't know whether to call this. Typically Victorian mothers would call this an aberration, which seems rather unkind. Doesn't seem the right way to talk about this beautiful moth, but that's what the Victorians used to call it. I just think of it as a nice attractive colour form. And then before I pass over to Dave, this is a photo that Christine Poaching sent me this afternoon. So Christine, do you want to tell us something about this? I think Christine is with us.
Yes, I'll try.
Hi.
Hi. I saw this in a field at Foxton, quite near the canal, but not dead against it. It was about 14 to 15 millimeters in length, mostly brown, as you can see. And it was just resting on a leaf. I was intrigued because I wasn't sure what it was. It's got a long proboscis, yeah, and some vertical stripes on its thorax, yeah, and the rest you can see.
Okay.
Yeah,
they're very nice photos, if I can say. I don't do Diptera. I'm notoriously bad at doing Diptera, but because they're such nice photos, I'm going to stick my neck out and try and identify this one, and then someone can tell me I'm wrong. One of our expert dipterists who's with us this evening can tell me I'm wrong. So this is a daggerfly. That long beak that you can see on the front is in fact a weapon. This is a highly predatory species attacks other flies. I'm pretty sure this is a female because of the body shape. But the nice thing about this is you can see the legs very clearly, and the legs are all brown. So I think this is a fly called Empis livida. Now someone can tell me I'm wrong if I've got that wrong. They've got some interesting behavior, these flies. This beak on the front is quite a formidable weapon, and what the male fly does is it presents the female with a nuptial gift. So it catches something and then it presents it to the female, and this is just, of course, a not so subtle way of getting eaten by the female when he's trying to mate with it. So if you look particularly in wet meadows, so Foxton would be a good place to look for these. Any kind of damp meadows, June and into July, these are quite common, and you can often see mating pairs, and very often you can often see that the female is eating something. So it's well worth looking out for these. There are 3 or 4 species of Empis. If you look up daggerflies on the NatureSpot website, you'll see them. You can tell them apart from the color of the legs and sometimes from the other markings as well. So have I got that right, Graham or David? Is this livida? I think this is Empis livida. Is that right?
It is, yeah. It's the commonest of the Empidae flies. The other common one that you see very frequently is Empis tessellata. You often see it on hogweed and flowers like that. And that has all black legs. It also has kind of orange at the base of its wings, which is very obvious when you see it. Both of them are quite large flies. There are quite a few other Empis species around, as you say, but these two, Empis livida, this one, and Empis tessellata, they're, 9 times out of 10 it'll be one of the 2 of them.
So the trick is look at the legs and send us a good photo like one of these where we can see the color of the legs quite clearly, and preferably the wings. Just generally speaking, when you're photographing insects, it's always helpful to have a vertical view looking down from the top and a side-on view, and for some insects a head-on view as well. The problem is insects that are visually oriented, where they've got good eyesight, because these flies hunt by sight. If you try and get a head-on view, you will often disturb it and it will fly away. So start by creeping up behind it and take the dorsal view first, and then see if you can get a side-on view. And then if you want to push your luck, take a head-on view, because for some species, being able to see the eyes and the front of the fly is quite useful. But those are the three views that are very, very helpful when it comes to verifying insect records from all different groups, basically. So thank you for that, Christine. Hope you'll submit that record.
Thank you very much.
So I'm gonna stop sharing now. That's me done. Dave, I'm going to hand over to you. I think you've got some observations and also some that have been sent in as well.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. I've been sent quite a few contributions from people, which is great. So I'm just going to share my screen. I've put them onto a PowerPoint. So yeah, we've had a few moths from Alistair in Dorset. Interesting to get a few contributions from outside Leicestershire, of course, because there's always, as you said right at the beginning, the chance that it will be a species which we don't get here. But with these moths, there's a kind of a question: is it the common or the smoky wainscot for this one? So is there anybody there that wants to give us the answer? And how can you tell?
Be one for Graham, I think.
Well, it looks like common wainscot, but really you need to just draw back one of the wings and look at the under wing. And if it's plain white, it's common. If it's smoky grey, it's a smoky wainscot.
Okay, so probably common, but we can't say for sure without a view of the underwings. Okay, what about this one? Spectacle or dark spectacle?
Spectacle for me, Dave.
Okay, how can you tell?
There's more grey at the tail end of the wing. It's whiter in the dark spectacle, but you can find online several diagrams comparing the two. You're best to just pull up one of those and check it off against that.
Okay. And then this is an old chestnut, grey arches or dark arches. I don't think you can tell actually, can you, without doing Gendet? Graham? Anybody want to comment on this one?
I think is this? I can't remember if this is the species that needs Gendet or not. I know I replied to a comment on the website about this. Maybe I'm wrong about this. Maybe it does need Gendet.
Well, grey arches is very, very uncommon, so I would guess it'd need Gendet if you want to record it as grey arches.
Okay, but yeah, I think you're right. It does definitely need Gendet to be absolutely sure.
Last year, for some reason, I seem to, I don't know if everyone else had this observation, I got loads and loads of dark arches in the moth trap, more than I've had before. And certainly the last time I ran my trap a few days ago, there were a couple of dark arches. Well, I assume there are dark arches in there, because all the ones I looked at last year, they were all dark arches. So I strongly suspect it is dark arches.
Okay, and finally, there's a question, is this the L album wainscot? Now this is a moth I've never seen before. I don't even know if we get it in Leicestershire. So I'm not sure if anybody's able to confirm it or not. Graham, have you ever seen it?
It's restricted to the south coast, and I think it's an immigrant. So
It's
Yeah.
not one I've seen, Dave.
Yeah. So I don't think.
If it's turned up in Leicestershire, it wants checking out.
no, I'm afraid
Right.
that's Dorset.
Yeah, sorry, we can't really help on that one.
Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay, so
Thank
moving
you.
on. We've had a couple of nice pictures, and the question was, is this great lettuce? One little bit of information that was sent with the email is that it was growing to 2 meters high. And in the books, one of the differences between prickly lettuce and great lettuce is the height. Great lettuce grows to 2 meters and prickly lettuce grows to 1.2 meters. However, this looks like prickly lettuce to me. But we've got Jeffrey and Sue with us, so they're much better qualified than me to comment.
Okay, well, the thing about these is you need to turn the leaf over and have a look at the spines underneath. Great lettuce has some very, very tough, large spines on the central midrib, which is usually red. This has a fair amount of red colouring in it, and the leaves are sort of quite dull grey-green. It looks light. It looks close to great lettuce, but I want to see the inflorescence as well. Sometimes the Lactuca cereola, the other one, has a little bit of red in it, particularly along the stem. That said, this seems to have quite a lot of red. Sometimes these are very difficult to split up, and you can only really do it by looking at the seeds, the achenes, and they're a dull olive grey-green in Lactuca cereola, and they are brilliant, well, really very dark maroon purple in the great lettuce. The leaf shape isn't always very useful. Both species can have leaves that look like that, which is a pinnatifid type of leaf. They can both have entire leaves. So I usually leave these right until the end of the year when I've got seeds. That's any time I found I can really be absolutely sure what I've got.
Okay.
It's Dave here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
This was my record, and it's actually growing on a driveway of a house, much to the amusement of the house owners. So it's there. It's not in flower yet, and I can get a lot more photographs as you've recommended. Is that the next thing to do?
Yeah, I just need a photograph of the seeds, really. I need to know what colour they are.
Yeah.
This sort of olivey green, or whether they're dark maroon.
Yeah. Well, I'll do that when it's flowered. That's, I mean, it's causing some great amusement.
Yeah. You've got a lot of red at the top there as well, so it's looking more like great lettuce.
Right.
But,
I'll keep an eye on it and take some more photographs.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Jeffrey. Okay, then this was another query about a tree this time. Is this the hybrid black poplar? There's the pictures of the trees and the bark, and then there's also pictures of the leaf.
Yeah. Okay, I've prepared a little PowerPoint, so if you can let me have control of the screen, I can run the PowerPoint.
Alan, can you do that?
Yeah, if you stop sharing, Dave, Jeffrey should just be able to share.
Okay.
Right, let me get me.
Is it working?
Yeah, hang on, I'm just getting there. There we are. Share. There we go. Right, poplars. Now, the first thing you need to do with poplars is to make sure you only take leaves from the tree. Only use those to identify, because poplars, particularly balsam poplars, sucker a lot. And the leaves on the suckers are very different, have a completely different morphology to the leaves on the tree. Now, today I was actually out in Peatling Harbour, and I found a poplar. This is a sucker leaf of a tree, and this is the normal leaf. I don't know if you can see the two. These are side by side. See, the sucker leaf is about 2 or 3 times the size of the ordinary one.
Can you go back a little bit? Put them a little bit further away from the camera.
Okay, there. So this one's the sucker leaf, and this one's the normal leaf. So they're huge. I mean, the sucker leaves are huge. So the morphology is wrong. So never use suckers. You only use leaves off the tree, the main tree. And the first thing you do is you turn the leaf over. Now, we had this with ferns, and you look at the underside, and you can see leaves either have a white underside, like the one in the picture, which I was sent, or they have a green underside. Now, as you see, it's a sort of pale green, so it does look a little tiny bit white, but when you put it next to the other one, it's no way, it's still green. It's not really white like that. So that's a sort of, that's a really good thing to do. So that's the first thing to do, is turn them over and look at the undersides. Now, if you've got a white underside, you've got a balsam poplar, or one of the hybrids. If it's green, it's a black poplar, or one of its hybrids. So that's quite a good thing. That splits them out into 2 groups. So you can eliminate half of the identifications that you need to do just by looking at that. The other thing you need to do is look at the leaf teeth. In balsam poplars, they're crenate. That means they look like little crests, and you can see these here are crest-like. Okay, in the black and balsam hybrids, they're serrate, so they look like teeth of a saw. Now, it's more like the teeth of a circular saw, or like the crest of a wave. It's not like the teeth you find on the saw that you go out chopping up bits of wood in the yard with. It's more of a circular saw type teeth. So these here are the serrate leaves. That's the 2 things you need to look at. So you've got a white undersurface, you have crenate teeth, or a green undersurface or serrate teeth. And then you can then work out what you've got. These 2 are the balsam poplars and their hybrids. And these 2 are the black poplars and their hybrids. This Populus canadensis is planted very, very widely. So now this was your specimen. So we've got the white undersurface and the crenate teeth. So we're into, we know it's going to be one of these. So it's a balsam poplar. Another thing you could do is smell it, because balsam poplars really are aromatic. And the buds are sticky, and they're really very, very attractively fragrant. One of them is called the Balm of Gilead poplar, because of its attractive fragrance. So, balsam poplars and their hybrids. There are 4 which are common. Trichocarpa, which is planted a lot by the Forestry Commission now. You can find a lot of that up in the northwest, particularly around the new the Anyashby Canal by Measham, around there by the Anyashby Canal. Balsamifera was relatively common. It used to be planted in the past, but not so much now, and it's gradually becoming less common. Populus hastata is one called balsam spire. This has very straight branches. And now, according to Stacey, it is widespread, and it's one of the most frequently planted poplars now. But I haven't seen it too many times. It's quite easy to spot because it's so stiff and upright. And Populus jackii is supposed to be widespread as well, but there aren't too many records in the database. The two others, Generosa and Berollinensis, which are very rare. So we know it's going to be one of these 6 and probably one of these 4. Now, the next thing we do to identify it down is to look at the PTL hairs. Now, the identification of Balsam-poplars is quite difficult because of the numbers of hybrids. So the best thing to do is to get this guide, which Andy Amphlett, who was the recorder for Banffshire in Scotland, wrote, and it's on the BSBI website. And it has some very good photographs of the characters you need to look for. You need to look at particularly the PTL hairs, and there are 2 or 3 different types, and they're distributed in different ways. So some are all very, very, very small and very short, and others are very long. So I couldn't see anything in the photograph to use because the PTLs weren't photographed. So I can't go any further. All I can say is it's one of those. Okay, so you have to look at the PTL hairs to decide which one it is. However, I've seen a lot of these. If you look at Andy's guide, you'll probably find it's one of these, Populus trichocarpa, which is the western balsam poplar, which has very, very tiny hairs, extremely short patent straight hairs all the way up the leaf petiole. So that's probably what it is, but I'm not prepared to go any further than that without seeing it, because they are very, very difficult. Unless you've got the thing in front of you. This is one that okay, so I think I'll stop sharing now. This is one I picked up today. This is actually Populus cross jackii, and it's when you can see around it a lot because it has this, some would say, attractive variegation. It has these lovely serrate, I don't know if you can see it, lovely serrate teeth and a variegation. And it has a very, very hairy stalk. I'm holding it up and I can see all the hairs on it. It's got very long hairs. Now this is occasionally planted and it suckers like bilio. And I picked all these suckers up about 3 or 4, no, more than that, about nearly 10 meters from the original plant, which was in a garden. And it suckered out into a field, into a verge. So they are quite invasive. Some of the invasive ones are quite interesting because I found them on the golf course at Humberston, and they're suckering like crazy there. And really, the golf course is the last place you want to put a suckering tree like this. But, well, you know, it's a fact of history. But of course, it's very useful for botanists because it's something interesting to identify. So this is Populus cross jackii, cultivar aurora, and that's a fairly common one. You'll find this. Okay, so I've got that down to your plant down to a group, a couple of species and a couple of hybrids, but I need to see this little bit here. I need to see all the petiola hairs and the distribution to be able to determine which one it is. So I can't get any further with that, I'm afraid. But hopefully, if you look at that link and download the document that Andy Amphlett wrote and look at the petioles, you'll be able to do it quite easily.
That's great. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's certainly going to point me in the right direction. Thank
Okay, well, let's move on. Some spiders now. So I think this one's for you, Alan. There's 2 pictures of this one.
Yeah, so this was, I think this was Query Amarobius laceweaver, but it's not. It's one of these deadly widows. You know, if you go within 100 yards of this spider, according to the newspaper, you'll die. In fact, you're still alive, so we know that the newspapers are lying. This is Steatoda bipunctata. So you can see this, the markings. We've got 3 or 4 species of Steatoda now, again, if you, I know it's difficult with a live spider. Can you go back to the previous photo, Dave? Was that more of a dorsal view?
It's come out a bit better than I thought the photo.
Yeah. Okay, so again, it's really helpful to have a dorsal view. I know the spider wasn't being very cooperative when you took this, but you can see this pale band across the front, and the fact that the rear markings are more divided. This is Steatoda bipunctata. Some of the other species, Steatoda nobilis and Steatoda grossa, have a much bigger body. This one's one of the sort of skinnier Steatoda. So it's one of the supposed false widows, which are becoming extremely common now, and possibly displacing other species of spider. I believe this one's snacking on a bee. Was that a bee? That
yeah, it was a red mason bee.
A red mason bee, yeah. It's an ex-red mason bee, Ed, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
They have extremely potent venom, these spiders, in terms of insect neurotoxin. Fortunately, most people that submit records to NatureSpot don't have insect nervous systems, so the venom is really ineffective against mammals. So they're not really poisonous at all. The mandibles and the fangs will pierce the skin potentially, but the venom just doesn't work on mammals because it's designed to knock down red mason bees. And as you can see, it's very effective at doing that. So yes, Steatoda bipunctata.
Thanks very much.
Okay, and then another question, is this the large tabby moth? Graham, perhaps?
Yeah, looks right to me, Dave.
Oh, good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, good. Oh.
Okay, that was an easy one.
Yep.
Okay, so this one was sent to me about a week ago by John Tinning. He knew it was a sawfly, but didn't know which one. It's interesting that he knew it was a sawfly because of all of the hymenopterans, the sawflies are the ones that tend to get ignored. But it's quite easy to tell that it's different to bees and wasps because it doesn't have the kind of wasp waist, it doesn't have a pinched waist. The body and the abdomen are very parallel. And it's a fascinating group. There's some of them are very tiny, but there's also quite a lot of large ones around. And indeed, this one is quite large. It's about 12 mil in length, and pretty obvious, nice, bright, kind of greeny yellow with a black back. So this one is Tenthredo mesamela, and it was interesting because if you want to kind of key it out, if you're not kind of sure what it is, and I've tried doing this with the Benson key. The only key that there is to sawflies was written by Benson in the 50s. So it's a bit dated. It uses language that we don't use today. So it's quite hard work, and it's referring to kind of really tiny microscopic features. For example, the crests at the base of the antennae, which you can barely even see on this picture. And there's a close-up, so you can see that these kind of green, actually very attractive green crests that overhang the base of the antennae is one of the features. And another one is the apical segment of the antennae is longer than it is broad. Very subtle features. And in fact, it made me realize, though, that once you're familiar with a lot of these species, you just recognize them from the jizz. I'm sure, if you're into moths, you can do that without having to look at all of the detailed features. And if you look, for example, on NatureSpot at the page showing the Tenthredo species, they're all quite large, over 10 mil, and most of them are brightly colored. And you can see we've actually rated most of them as either green or amber because they're fairly straightforward to recognize once you're familiar with the combination of features. They all have this similar shape, quite sturdy, with this kind of square, almost hammerhead type head. The only one that's tricky, Tenthredo notha, there's actually a an aggregate of about 3 species, which are very difficult to tell apart, but all the others are quite straightforward. So really spectacular insects, and it's a pity that more people don't actually record them. I got interested in sawflies about 10 years ago, and there was hardly any records. I think at the time there was less than 20 species that had been recorded in Leicestershire and Rutland, and over the last 10 years we've built that up to about 100, and there's more to be found. There's 600 species in the UK altogether. So just coming back to Tenthredo mesamela, it's a nice bright green species. So the only thing that you might, there's 2 species you might confuse it with. This is another quite common one, Rogogaster. I think these are brilliant sawflies. They just look like aliens, you know, those kind of big green eyes, but much brighter, a green head rather than a black head, and much more green on the top of the thorax. Again, once you've seen one and got your eye in, they're fairly easy to tell. Also, this one's got kind of green stigma on its wings. There are a few Rogogaster species, and within that genus they can be quite tricky, but to distinguish it from the Tenthredo is fairly straightforward. But there is one other Tenthredo that is also green. Again, it's more green, has less black on it, but it's a much slimmer insect. Again, once you've kind of seen the two, they're fairly easy to distinguish. You can just, you know, see them on a leaf 6 feet away, you would know they were different. So some of the pictures we get sent aren't always very clear. This was one that got emailed to me a few weeks ago. I don't know where it's from, actually. I don't think it's Leicestershire, but it doesn't give you an awful lot to go on. I threw this one straight to Alan because he's the spider expert, but he failed the test, I'm afraid. He said he could confirm it was a spider, but couldn't go any further than that.
Actually, I'm looking at it again, and I'm not even sure it is a spider. This is the problem with mobile phones. This is yeah. Is that a spider? I don't know. We for photo verification, we really need to see a little bit more detail than that. Can I just?
You're not quite as good as I thought you were, Alan.
I'm sorry. Can I just backtrack briefly to sawflies?
Sure.
I've shared a link in the chat window. There is apparently, there's a Field Studies Council, one of these aid gap keys to sawflies. I've not used this myself, so generally these are very nice keys because they're usually quite accessible and easy to use. I'm not sure if it's got all the British species in it. I don't know if you know this one, Dave, but certainly I think for anyone starting out with sawflies, this is quite an accessible starting point.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I mean, well, just generally, as you say, the A-gap series are very good. This particular one, by a chap called Wright, it only takes you to genus. It doesn't take you to species. However, if you can get to genus, you're more than halfway there. You know, you're 90% of the way there in identifying it. And then you could use Benson. You can get Benson from NatureSpot. It's also available free from the Royal Entomological Society website. So using the two in conjunction is quite useful. Most of the identification in the aid gap guide is based on wing venation. So it takes a little while to kind of get your eye in and learn all the different cells and the veins and so on. But the more, like anything, the more you do it, the more familiar you get and the easier it becomes. So this was another photo that was sent to us a few weeks ago, and I thought, well, that's quite a striking creature. They didn't know what it was at all. The question was simply, what is it? I've not seen it before, and I was kind of scratching my head. And I would imagine probably none of you have seen it before, because when I questioned the guy that was emailing it to me where he was from, he was from India. We've actually had quite a few pictures from various parts of the world sent to us, not always saying where they're from. So it's quite a challenge, I think, but quite fun at the same time.
When we did our NatureSpot user survey about 18 months ago, I was a bit surprised at some of the comments we got. There was one comment from New Zealand that said, "Oh, NatureSpot's great. I use it for identifying stuff all the time." And I mean, I don't know how many species of insect or plant we exported to New Zealand. Probably quite a lot, but nevertheless, we're not really confident that close to the Antarctic, so yeah.
Okay, well, that's me done. So I hand back to you, Alan.
Yeah, well, thanks everyone. Thanks to everyone who sent records in. So we're opening it up now. If anyone's got any photos that they want to share, I don't know if you've got anything, Graham. Have you recently, or?
No, nothing to ask about tonight, Alan.
Okay, how's the moth trap been going, Graham? Anything interesting in the moth trap recently?
Yes, variegated golden tortrix last night, first in 10 years.
Oh, very good. Very good.
Happy bunny.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Never seen one of those. Does anyone else have any records that they want to share, or any general questions to ask? Martin, can we tempt you to share one of yours? Maybe I see your hand, Sue. We'll maybe come to you next.
We do moth trapping at Linden normally, which we're not doing at the moment. We're not shut down. We've been doing it just over the border in Cambridgeshire. We had a blotched blotched emerald the other day, which was quite interesting. It's quite unusual.
Very good. Yeah, nice. It's I'd say my moth trap's still been underperforming and quite disappointing recently, but it helps now. We're not getting thunder and lightning and torrential rain every night, so that helps quite a lot. Sue, did you want to share something?
Okay, I'll try the share screen thingy.
Yeah.
Can everyone see that all right?
Yeah, okay, see that.
It's another sawfly for Dave, really. This little beast is eating my valerian at the moment and absolutely causing havoc. I just wondered if you could identify it from the caterpillars, or at least point me in the right direction.
No, not off the top of my head. It is often useful to know what they're eating, because a lot of the sawflies are quite specific to a host plant. And that's often why they're a pest. You think of like the Burberry sawfly and the Solomon seal sawfly and so on. I'm not familiar with a valerian sawfly, but it does look familiar, so I'd have to look it up. There is a really good and fairly new Facebook site on sawflies. And I know a couple of the people that run it. They're kind of some of the UK's experts in the taxon. So the photos would be good enough, I think, to put on the sawfly Facebook group, and almost certainly you get an answer there.
Okay, I can do that. Okay, I'll stop sharing now, Alan, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. I've put a link in the chat window, Sue, a website that I'm not altogether familiar with, but I think you can go on there and search for valerian. And I think, as Dave says, it's a bit like galls. If you know the host plant, that really narrows it down quite a lot. Graham, have you got suggestions, sawfly suggestions?
You're muted, Graham.
You're muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. I've just Googled all the information Sue's given us, and there's a sawfly larva looking just about identical It's Macrophyra albicincta. Do you want me to? I'll email it to you, Sue.
It's I think that's the one that I found, Jeffrey. That I shared from the Sawfly site. So it's in the chat window, Sue, if you want to follow the link. The problem it looks like a good candidate. I'm not sure as the county's leading experts, we should really be Googling things. That's my main problem. But hey, who doesn't Google stuff? You know, who doesn't like a good Google every now and again? So yeah. Anyone else? Got anything to share?
Can I share my photo?
Please do. Yeah.
Oh, I've got a lot of. Can you see that?
Not yet.
What can you see?
We can see you.
Me.
Yeah.
Why can you not see my?
Is it an image file?
Yeah.
If you open the image first and then do share screen, you normally get
it was open. It was open.
Here it comes.
Here.
Okay, now we can see it.
Better. Okay, yeah. That's a picture from Bagworth Heath. I went to about a week ago, and because I'm not an entomologist, I'd like to know more about invertebrates. I was wondering if anyone could tell me if that's a good habitat. I was excited to see that because it looks really good, and I'd like to know if that impression is correct and it is really good. It's definitely better than plantation, I think. Can anyone?
We should let Sue answer this really, because this is Sue's local patch. But yeah, I think Bagworth Heath is fantastic. I think we're rapidly getting into a situation where some of these old post-industrial sites are some of the best sites that we've got in Leicestershire. Asfordby Hill is another one that springs to mind, Bagworth Heath. And I'm really excited about some of the sites up in the National Forest up in the northwest. Once they've had another couple of decades to mature, I think there's going to be some fantastic sites up there. And it's hard to know why, but it's mostly just, I think, because they've been left alone. They haven't been overmanaged. They haven't had a lot of chemical input. I mean, I know some of the industry was pretty toxic while it was there. I don't know when these sites were landscaped. I don't know how much topsoil was removed to remove some of the toxic remains. But in Leicestershire, with these really heavy clay soils, actually scraping off a lot of the topsoil is a wonderful thing to do. Bagworth Heath is, I mean, as far as I'm aware, I mean, it's pretty much as close as you can come to heath in Leicestershire. I don't know where the heather came from. Sue, you probably know this. Was the heather actually planted at Bagworth Heath? But I mean, it's like being on a heath in the south of England.
Yes, it was planted. It was planted by the county council as part of the restoration. And I think this is going back to the early 90s. And it sort of sulked for a while, but I've noticed in the last 10 years it really has taken off and started to escape from the cage it's been planted in. It's got a fence around it, but it's creeping down the hill. And that top of that was the old pit bank. The soils are very mineral, very clayey, very shaly, and with lots of bits of coal and stuff in them. You'll get pyramidal orchids up there, and there's a nice marbled white colony as well, and heath, green hair streak. It's very, very good site.
Yeah.
Well worth going to. Sorry, Jutta, I beg your pardon.
You know, I'm sorry. No, but I noticed a lot of heathland bryophytes. Actually, I was so excited, really. Yeah, and they must have come by spores. And it's a bit like, you know, the top of Barden Hill. where they recreated. So it's so nice to see this. It's so good, and it's definitely one of the good sites for heathland bryophytes, and they're spreading. Yeah.
There is in Bagworth. There is another site with some heather as well, called Bagworth Beacon, which is near the other colliery. There were 2 collieries in Bagworth, and that also was created by landscape architect who worked. She sadly has died now, but so I always go there and remember her, which is nice. But the other place that you might be interested in on Bagworth, there's a small sphagnum pond.
Oh.
Well, actually quite a large sphagnum marsh, really. It's also got typha in it, but that might well be worth a bryologist. Is a bryologist? Is that right? A moss expert looking around it. I'm not one, so I don't know.
Oh, that would be interesting. I thought, you know, if we can do surveys again together, that would be a good site to do a bryological visit, really, a really good site. And some of the trees were nice as well and had some good mosses. But it was especially this area because it doesn't look like a rewilding. That's exactly how I imagine it rewilding, and that's, you know, so much structure and rough grass and flowers as well and everything. It must be good for invertebrates. And there are some landowners in the Charnwood Forest who have sort of species poor habitats, grassland. And I think that is something they could, they could let develop on their land, you know, have more scrub. And I showed this picture to one landowner, and I said, that's what I expect, that's what I can imagine you having on your land. And he said, yeah, it looks nice, but is it good for wildlife?
Yes, it's a great,
I think so, yeah. I think
it's ecotone, isn't it? It goes from grass to scrub to trees, so it's always those margins and transitions that are the best places.
That I agree. I just wondered if anyone has seen, but you've mentioned a few things, but if anyone has seen any interesting insects. So maybe someone has, some of the people who are here now today, maybe they, entomologists want to go and find some rare species.
It's on my list for the next couple of weeks, Uta, but you keep throwing these surveys at us, so we can't get there because we're too busy doing other stuff. So, but no, you're absolutely right. It's a great site, and it is nice to see this post-industrial land in the state that it's becoming now. It's very, very good.
Yeah, and as you say, there are not many places like that in Leicestershire.
Aswoodby Hill.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I've been there. That's a good site as well.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Could you stop sharing your screen? And Nicola's been waiting to say something.
I'll see if I can find it for you.
You've turned your video off, Nicola, but no screen share.
I'm just trying to look for where screen share is.
Are you on an iPad or a computer?
iPad, I'm just finding it. I was just doing things.
Yeah, you'll have to get the screen to pop up.
Yeah, it's doing. The question is this a sawfly? And then I'll tell you. Find the best one. Can you see it?
Not yet. Now we can see it.
Is that a sawfly?
No, it's a beetle. Isn't it Rupella maculata?
Okay.
Yeah, it's one of the longhorn beetles.
Yeah.
And I think Dave is right. I think it's maculata. Again,
I saw a pair mating, and then another male came along and tried to dislodge the first male, and they had quite a tussle, and the female's a lot larger than the two males.
If it is what I think it is, Rupella maculata, they're spectacular beetles, large and brightly coloured, and you often see them on hogweed and open top flowers like that.
Do you want me to see if I can show the video?
Yeah.
I think, again, with the photos, if you can get a dorsal view looking down from above, it's very helpful. It's quite a characteristic species. That the pattern of spots are quite characteristic.
It's quite variable. If you look on the species page on NatureSpot, you'll see there's a range of photos of it with various elytral patterns, quite different ones.
Yes, they were all three quite different. I'm trying to work out how to get into videos rather than photos.
We're getting a beetle mating video.
You were going to,
with bated breath.
Maybe I'll wait till another time.
You have to wait till after 9 o'clock.
I don't think it's the video, it's just a static this time. Or not.
Appeared and then disappeared.
Okay.
It's definitely much easier doing this on a computer, I think, rather than on an iPad. So, here we go. Yeah, that's it.
Definitely Rupella.
Thank you.
They crop up in quite large numbers around this time of year. They'll be around for a month or so. Very, very spectacular beetle. I think probably breeds in dead wood. Is that right, Dave?
Yeah, most of the longhorns do.
Yeah. So again, the reason we don't see it more is because there are so few sites that have a lot of dead wood on these days. So
it's right by my dead wood pile.
Well, that would be
go.
Good. Excellent. It seems to have been a spectacular year for stag beetle in the southeast of England. Not the lesser stag beetle that we get in VC55, but the real giant stag beetle. And I'm pretty sure, well, there is good evidence that that's another species undergoing a big range expansion northwest, and I'd be very, very surprised if that doesn't crop up in VC55 within a few years, based on where they've been in the last few years. They seem to like the warmer summers, but that is a species which is going to be very limited by the availability of dead wood, and they are a bit fussy. So if you want stag beetles, and they'll be with us shortly, you need to make vertical log piles with half of the logs buried below the ground. They don't do so well where you just pile the logs up on top of the ground. So if you make some nice, dig a hole and stick your logs in vertically, that's what stag beetle, then you'll get these 4-inch long stag beetles arriving sometime in the next decade. But I couldn't tell you exactly when, unfortunately. But they're coming. They're definitely on their way. Okay, is there anyone else got any records? I think we've had a great selection of things tonight. We've had some plants and some insects and moths, and we've been down to Dorset, and we've been to Hertfordshire, and we've had a good tour around Stamford. So it's been a good session, I think. And India. Yeah, I forgot India. Absolutely. Yeah, indeed. Okay, well, in that case, we've been at it for just over an hour. I'm going to stop the recording. So the next date is the 20th of July, 2020. If you're watching this at some point in the future, we hope you'll join us for the next one. And I think we will change the time. I think we'll make it 7:30 on the 20th of July. So thanks very much, everyone.